Hey guys, back again with another review on a game that's actually not out yet. It comes out the 21st of June digitally, and then the physical copies were actually delayed. They're not coming out till the 28th, and someone was kind enough to give me a review copy of this game, and I'm going to keep their name anonymous because I'm not sure if they want to have their name said in the video, but it was really awesome. I was not expecting it. And I've been looking forward to this game. I mentioned it in my Games of June video. I thought it always looked like this really unique strategy RPG. And it lived up to my expectations for the most part. I really enjoyed this game. It's not perfect. There's actually quite a few things that bother me with it, but I think it's just one of the most innovative and unique strategy RPGs out there, that even if the gameplay does falter a bit and not everything works, I do think it's worth checking out if it looks interesting to you. But we'll start with the story, which is honestly probably one of the weakest parts of the game. It's not terrible, but basically it takes place in like this generic fantasy world, and you're kind of like this mercenary leader, and your character, you don't really have a character basically. You basically follow these NPCs that you've got on the screen here with your guild, and these are kind of like the main characters. And they're the kind of characters you've seen plenty of times before. They're kind of dull. They're not terribly interesting. They hardly get any character development whatsoever. And the story itself basically ends up being like a save the world storyline. It doesn't seem that way at first, but I don't know. I find like a lot of strategy RPGs just don't have good storylines. Like it almost feels like a lot of them focus more on the gameplay, and that's the case with this game as well. I can't say I was really invested in the story or really cared what was going on, you don't really get attached to your character or your squad because you're basically using recruits. Like they don't really have characters, and the two NPCs that showed up on the screen there earlier, you just get to see them talk with each other before and after missions. They don't actually come with you on the missions themselves, but yeah, I don't think the story was really a focus here. Once you do finish the story, and it's around 30 hours, there's like a post-game campaign, and basically like the world itself has like 4 warring nations, which again, that's something you've probably seen in a lot of different RPGs. And the post-game is actually kind of interesting, where you kind of like choose a nation to make a contract with, and then you go from there. So it's cool that there is a post-game after the main story, but the main story is not too long. I really breezed through it because I was kind of addicted to this game. But let's talk about the gameplay. This is where I think the game is quite unique. Where should I start? Now, this game is very overwhelming at first. There are a lot of mechanics and systems here. There's like this really in-depth online war mode where you kind of, again, contract with a nation, and you're kind of like capturing territories and trying to have your nation be on top. And you, like other players across the world, join these different nations, and you can go into these battles where other players' troops, you can basically fight against them. I didn't mess with it too much. There's a lot of different modes in the online mode that you don't really see in the single player. Basically building building catapults and cannons and kind of placing them on the map. It seems really cool if you could get into it. I've never been really into the competitive games, so I didn't dive too much into it, but it's definitely there, and there's a lot of content with this game. Like, it's insane. If you really love this game, you'll be spending like hundreds of hours with it. It almost has like an infinite amount of content with the like online mode, but we'll talk about like the story mode and the actual gameplay there. Again, I'm not going to actually get into all the mechanics here. I don't want this review to go on too long. If I talked about every single mechanic in the game, this would be like an hour-long review. But I would like some of the game to be a surprise for people. But you've got like 2 different modes. You've got kind of like the map mode and then the battle mode. The battle mode is what you see here. I'll talk about the map first. So in like a game like Disgaea, it's like this. It's like a grid-based battle where you move your characters on a grid and attack the enemies. And in this game, it's very weird. It's like a board game where you kind of move a chess piece across this massive board with all like these different tiles, and there's like enemy chess pieces, like these purple enemy chess pieces, They're kind of like the weaker groups of enemies. And then you'll have like red ones, and then you'll have like this elite type of unit. And basically, you have an amount of action points to clear a map. And there's a bunch of different variety with these maps. Basically, you start off just having to get to a certain location, but there's also like defense missions where you have to defend certain points from enemies. There's even some stealth missions. So there is a good amount of variety, but the whole board game thing that this game's got going on is kind of interesting. But you have these action points, and every time you move your chess piece in one of 4 directions, you lose an action point. And you'll actually fail these missions if you use up all your action points. And there'll be like a bunch of obstacles that you'll find on the map. And to get past them, you might need like a certain item or one of your skills that one of your characters have might be able to get you through the obstacle. Or you can like make your way through it cautiously, and they'll take up like 3 action points. And battles will take up action points. So you have to actually manage your action points while you're going through this map. And you have to, it's not actually advisable to run into every enemy you see. There'll also be like invisible enemies that you gotta make your way around. And you're basically trying to make it to the end, and you're kind of like studying the map and seeing what would be the best route to get to the end. And the way they spice things up is actually pretty interesting. I was kind of shocked at the variety. They'll also have cannons that will be on these maps. You'll see these red tiles here on the map screen here. And if you get into a battle on those red tiles, the cannons can fire and attack your units. And like I said before, there's some some levels like these defense levels where you have to place actual cannons yourself on these maps. You'll find treasure chests and all these items throughout the maps. You'll find different NPCs too that will give you certain quests. Because the story, you're just basically going mission to mission, but there's also travel missions where you have an infinite amount of action points, and you can just basically collect a bunch of items to use like at the blacksmith and things like that. You also have morale that you have to kind of recover. The more fights you get in and the worse you do in battles, the lower your morale goes down. So you have to like use items to manage that. The way to heal is to use items, or if you have a healing skill, like your troops have a healing skill, you'll use one of those skills to heal your units. So you have to actually make sure your characters are kind of topped up on health. And it's just, there's actually a surprising amount of strategy with these board game maps. And it's unique. I've never seen a game like this before. So honestly, I really liked it. The only thing I didn't like are the stealth missions, where basically if you run into an enemy, and the enemies kind of chase you sometimes, you instantly fail the mission. Those were annoying. Luckily, there's actually none of those in the main story. There's also other like missions you can go on, like single missions, and then there's like the kind of PvP type missions. But once you do get into a battle, you get into like these... I mean, the closest I can think of to these battles is Valkyrie Profile. But basically, you have different lanes, and this actually kind of reminds me of Code of Princess. And your troop has 4 characters at once, and they all start. You basically kind of create your formation. You have to actually choose where you want your characters to start, and you can actually use items. You can have like a healing box. That uses, like, you have SP, and each item you place on in your formation takes up amount of SP. So you might actually use like a healing item where your enemies can walk on it, or your characters can walk on it and gain health, or you can put like a spiked shield to kind of get in the way of enemies. So there's a good amount of strategy there as well. But the battles are interesting. You have a move gauge and an action gauge for each of your characters. And your move gauge, you basically can like swap between the different lanes and move back and forth and get up to enemies. But eventually, once that move gauge depletes, that's it. Then you have to make your attack. And your attacks are dependent on this action gauge, which is a totally different separate gauge. So you can't just keep attacking mindlessly. Like, you have to make sure you're using the right moves. And each kind of attack is added to like a different button, like square, triangle, circle. You have melee characters and ranged characters, and you can recruit different characters. After every mission, you go back to like your base, and there's like so many different things you can do in your base. You can visit like the different capitals. You can use a blacksmith. All sorts of customization options. You can completely customize each of your characters. Characters level up. You put points into their different attributes. Characters will constantly gain new skills. The difference between each character is pretty fascinating. I was kind of surprised. Each kind of character feels completely different. And it was really fun kind of experimenting with all the different characters and kind of creating like the ultimate troupe. What I did notice throughout the game, there are a few quirks with the battle system that are kind of annoying. From what I gather, like maybe I was playing it wrong, and maybe some people that play this game will be able to make better use of the ranged characters, but honestly, I found magic and like bow type characters, like any ranged characters, were kind of underpowered. They just weren't doing as much damage as the melee characters, and there's like a timing-based minigame with their attacks where you have like a reticle that goes back and forth over like a certain radius to attack the enemies, and your ranged attacks will always end up launching enemies past the radius where you can hit them, so you'll only get like a few hits in, and then the rest of your magic attacks are wasted. So I don't know, I used like a witch character throughout like the second half of the game, but I was always experimenting with like my 4th party member slot and couldn't find like a character I really liked, at least a ranged character. Although I used the medic for quite a bit as well. The medics have like healing potions they can throw, and the throwing is kind of irritating too. You can't see like a good arc for your healing potion or the attacking item the medics have. So I often ended up hitting my own party members by accident, and that's another thing you have to watch out for in these battles, that you don't hit your own party members. Which I thought that it did something interesting to the battle system. You have like the enemies here, you'll see like they're standing on boxes, so each fight kind of plays out differently depending on what enemies there are. But yeah, magic characters, I don't know, I felt they were kind of underpowered. My favorite class was the Dark Knight. Like the Dark Knight just wrecked when I put a bunch of strength into that character. Also, you have at the bottom, you can see the turns of characters, like the turn order. You also have like an assist gauge at the top left there, where you notice he's hitting the enemy and the gauge is increasing. And if one of your characters gets an enemy to really low health, an assist chance might pop up, where you can have another character do like an assist attack to finish the enemy off. There's also like this grit mechanic, where if one of your characters dies, sometimes you'll get the chance to have them revive with 1 HP. There's a whole lot to this battle system, and I really enjoyed it from start to finish. It was just really fun experimenting with all the different characters, and I thought there was like a healthy amount of strategy with these battles. And it was fun customizing all the different moves for my characters as well, because there's so many different skills that each character has. Difficulty-wise, it's not the hardest game. I gotta say, it's probably more on the easy side, at least for the main story. Now, from what I played of the post-game, it ramped up in challenge. It definitely gets harder as you go. I ended the game off at like around level 30, and I think like level 99 is the cap, so there's a lot to this game. There's a lot going on, and it is overwhelming at first, but once you kind of understand everything, it works really well, and I really enjoyed it. Visuals, it's like very Vanillaware-esque, and the guy that directed this game came from Vanillaware, so it makes sense. But it's a gorgeous game. I played it on the Vita, and it just looked great on that. I imagine it would look great on the PS4 as well. Voice acting is really good. The writing is generally decent as well, but the voice acting was surprisingly strong, I thought. Except for this one female character. Her voice was like really shrill. But the music's okay. It didn't really have like a lasting... it didn't really impress me all that much. There was like one song... every time you finish a battle, the song reminded me of the song in Final Fantasy Tactics, which I thought was like really good. But overall, the music, I don't know, it's okay. It gets the job done, but I didn't love it. Yeah, I mean that's about it with Grand Kingdom. There's obviously probably a lot of stuff I'm missing. I mean, this game, it's just crazy the amount of stuff in this game, the amount of mechanics and systems. But overall, I did enjoy it. It has its quirks. I was kind of addicted to it as well. I don't think it's an amazing game, and it might be. I don't know if it's worth like the full price, honestly. But if it does look interesting to you, definitely maybe check it out down the line. And if you're looking for something different, like really unique, with like a strategy RPG. I think this will do the trick. I think most people will probably enjoy this. Now, I didn't like it enough to do all like the post game stuff or get really heavily into the online stuff, but that main story, like the 30-hour story, I really enjoyed, and I can see myself coming back to this game for sure. But yeah, a pleasant surprise. I'm glad it turned out as well as I had hoped. But that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Though I'm supposed to be assisting you, I did not have faith in you. However, if you continue to walk such a dangerous path, you may misstep one day. I just